I guess we'll go ahead and get started now. So, I guess let me first say welcome back, everybody, to the renamed, reborn, rebranded Lucid. I went was when I started trying to put the name for the podcast in on YouTube. I found out how many other podcasts. I thought I was so original. Like, I'm going to call mine Working Title. And then guess what? There's 50 other Working Title podcasts out there. So, yeah. Anytime you think you're clever or creative, just be ready to check yourself. So, it has been I guess first let me say thanks for listening again. This is I'm losing count of the episodes. So, and that's partly my fault. I'm to blame. Oh, I forgot to turn so I have this, I'm doing a new thing this time where, to kind of try and keep myself on track. I've actually come back quite prepared, I'll have you know. So last time I was doing this, I think I had an outline, but it was super rough. It was very rough. And I think even having my outline, I struggled to stay on topic because sometimes you get on a roll and, it's not that I stay secluded. It's that, I go out and I talk to people. I think that a lot of times when I interact with people, and I'm actually kind of working my way into a segue here. I'm like a natural and didn't even know it. Starting my timer here. So what I'm doing is I'm giving myself a countdown clock so that I know how long I have to talk about each subject. So the clock has officially started for my introduction. I guess a couple of things I wanted to talk about before I really got into movies, what we're actually here to really talk about, the thing that we love, film, television. I don't know, I had to do a whole lot of soul searching, I guess you would say, and decision making and boundary setting, and that's actually what I'm going to get to here in a minute. So I promised myself, I was really close to not doing the podcast anymore, and not because it's that I don't enjoy doing it. It's that, I hate to say life is hard because that's all perspective, right? Everyone has their own struggles, and it's up to each of us, individually to look at the things and the people in our lives and determine what serves us best. And that sounds very selfish. And that is something that I struggled with for a long time. Okay. So, sorry, the beginning of this podcast, the beginning of this podcast is going to be a little bit off because, like I was saying a minute ago, it's been a real struggle the last couple of weeks for me personally, and it's turned out to be a good thing. And I think that struggles often are, they never feel like it when you're in the moment. But I've found, and I can't speak for anyone but myself, but I've found that usually when I have a little bit of time and perspective, I'm better off for going through whatever I went through. And in this case, there's really no way to go to beat around the bush without saying, what I'm talking about. And honestly, that's kind of why I decided to come back and do the podcast, was because I'm a writer, and I've been working on my first novel I started on it in 2019, and I started on it during a very turbulent time in life. It was turbulent for everybody. It was the beginning of the pandemic, and the company that I had worked for the past, I think I'd been there 12 years at that point. Very large company, not quite Google size, but pretty big in the Houston area. And I may have mentioned this on a previous podcast. So if I did, I'm sorry, but I just gotta tell the story, because that way, if you're hearing it now, then like, and you end up coming back to listen to another podcast, then bless you, number one. But number two, that way I don't have to like repeat this ever again. And like, if somebody's not sure, I can just be like, go listen to like one of the early podcasts, and like you'll hear my story. And this is just a part of it, like the relevant part. So like I say, I had a very good job in corporate America. Like so good that I often felt guilty for how good it was, like knowing how it was challenging. But then we got bought out. We got bought out the last year. I think it was in 2019. We got bought out by a bigger company, like that was not a better company. They were just bigger. And like everything changed, it went from being like this, amazing dynamic place to a place that was just a grind to like work through. And then the pandemic happened. I had recently gone through a divorce, and so like life was like tumultuous. It was for everybody, but especially for me, because I was in solitude. Like I had gone from being very, I don't want to say outgoing, but like at least like seeing people. I went to work every day like everyone else. I had friends. I trained Muay Thai for about 2 years, like pretty frequently, and helped. I was like an assistant coach on the weekends, and loved it. So I stayed really, really busy. And then, the pandemic happened, and then I was stuck in isolation with nowhere to go, although I was seeing someone at the time. And like a lot of people, so I guess I kind of got into a pandemic relationship as well. And, that was good and bad. But, all that to say, it was a little crazy. And so I started not really knowing. That's when I was introduced to, here's where I'm going with it. That's when I was dating this very nice woman. She introduced me to the concept of Myers-Briggs personality tests. It's like for those who don't know or haven't heard of it, there are different levels to it. Let me say that first. Like there's the very basic level, which will sound a little bit like horoscope reading. And then there's like another level, which gets into a little bit more of the actual science of it. Which is I think it's Jungian cognitive function studies and the cognitive function stacks. And I was just introduced to it by her. So I took a test, and, I typed one way. And for the people who know what that is, I typed INFP that in 2019. And so I was really interested in it. I've always been interested in that kind of stuff. So I started doing some reading, and I found that some things about it helped me, like just understanding that theory of. So basically what it is, I'll give a quick summary. And for those who don't know, I'm going to give this super basic summary of it. But there's so many like really good resources, so many sites I've found on YouTube that cover this in depth if you're interested. And actually, I decided, because of this last week, I actually started a nonfiction. I hate the word self-help. I don't know what else to call it though, but it's kind of a self-help book. It's basically what I used unintentionally on myself, or like what I did with myself to kind of like figure a lot of shit out and deal with a lot of like problematic things and people in my life. So. And a lot of that happened this week, which is why I sound like I've been through the ringer, probably because I have. It's been an emotional, like, fucking roller coaster. There's no really other way to say it. So if you had a kid in the car or something, like, sorry, I should have warned you at the top that I didn't know, where this was going to go. So, and I'm probably already over my time limit, but I think this is important. So I'm just going to say it. And if people want to tune out, then they can tune out. So I was introduced to the Myers-Briggs by my ex-girlfriend, and kind of got into it. But then, like I said, this was right early pandemic, and I was still having some issues with my ex and like some things going on with our children, and that all got out of control. Like a lot of it due to my immaturity, and basically it turned into like a the only way I can think of to equate it is like not saying that I'm Johnny Depp and my ex is for sure not Amber Heard, but that's the only way I could think of. It really turned into kind of a Johnny Depp Amber Heard kind of deal, man. Just super toxic and like out of control, especially like, you know, I could have been the bigger person, but where my mistake was is I started pissing off the elected officials in our small town as well as her. And so that was a bad idea, especially me being a minority. So in a non-minority city. So basically there's a lot more to it that I'm not going to get into here, but I ended up incarcerated for right about a year. I was picked up in the state of California and stayed in jail there, waiting for extradition to back to Texas. So, you know, I got to see like a different side of California that I wasn't really expecting to see when I went there. But here's the thing, you know, like I was saying about struggling and like, you know, when you think you're in the darkest place possible, which I now know what the darkest place I can imagine, and I can literally describe it. It's a cell in the transportation wing of the LA County Jail where there's no light. And like the only thing you can really see is like the corner of a TV that's like down the hall, and you have to like press your head up against the bars to be able to see it. And so, you know, spending time in that kind of environment, the craziest thing is like I met some really fucking cool people, like and some of them, I mean, some not so cool, like I'm gonna say that, like, you know, you meet all kinds, but I did meet a handful of people who like I was like, man, I wish we met each other like in better circumstances, you know. And you know, like one of them, matter of fact, schooled me to a lot of things I didn't know about California. You know, he had been there his whole life, and you know, I learned. Here's what was weird, and like this is what. So I had started writing before I moved to California, and so that was what I was doing. I was, you know, there will be people who say I was running from the law or whatever, but you know, I know about GPS, you know what I mean? Like I worked in IT, like the idea that I thought that I was going to escape from law enforcement by going, anyway, that's neither here nor there. But so I had started writing before I went there. I was just going because I was like, I want to do something else. I'm tired of IT. Like I have the money. I was day trading and like making a lot of money, and like people think I'm lying, but like if you think I'm lying, go look at my Instagram account. Like I literally like I was staying in. I went and bought a Tesla, and like I was like doing a road trip across the country. Like I went to New York, I went to LA. I was staying in like badass hotels. Like I was doing my thing, and like anyway, so so when I'm in California, I get I get put in a cell with this guy, and he starts telling me all about like this Hollywood stuff, like behind the scenes, like how he knew this stuff. I don't know. Some stuff I'm sure was common knowledge, but because he had been in the jail, he was telling me stuff about like Robert Downey Jr., who I did not know had spent 2 years in jail. And so I was like, wow, man, this is crazy. And so he really encouraged me. He's like, man, you know, because I had time to like tell him some of the stuff that I was writing. He's like, you need to be out here. He's like, whenever you get this stuff, this guy literally told me this stuff. I swear to God. His name was Tricky. And so Tricky told me, he's like, man, you definitely are a writer. He's like, you need to move back out here, go home, back to Texas, get this shit straightened out, and come back here, move to Silver Lake, you know, look me up, and then like I'll show you the city, or like show you the rest of the city, because I had been there for like a little bit, like a few weeks, and living in downtown. So I had been around a little bit and gone out to like Huntington Beach, and I had been out there for work a few times. So anyway, so that was like one thing. There was this guy like telling me, okay, right, and so then I get sent back to Texas, and so I have nothing but time on my hands, and so, the other problem was that I'd made all this money, but like once I got thrown in jail, like all these trades that I had like on the line, or like in progress, like they all basically went belly up like while I was sitting in LA. So basically, like, while I was sitting in jail this whole time, like all my money is evaporating, and like they won't give me my phone, so I can't call anybody. It was a nightmare. But anyway, so I keep writing that whole time, and then I have basically a book done when I get out. It's like just fiction, nothing. There were so many people like, or like in the jail libraries. I thought this was hilarious. Like there's so many people that write books, and I shouldn't laugh at them. I'm glad they're writing books, but it's like, let somebody read your book before you just publish it, because some of these books that are written in prison are like, you can tell, like you wonder if they were written in elementary. You know what I'm saying? Like, let somebody edit that thing. But so kept writing, then all of it finally gets resolved, and I get out, and like, so now I'm kind of back where I started, right? I was day trading and whatever, and writing, and so now I'm kind of back to that. But the problem was, I lost like all the money that I was trading with, basically, and so it's been like a struggle, just kind of trying to get back up on my feet. And I had some help from family, and once I really finally got back to like, how do I want to say this, a functional level, I guess. It took me a little bit, like 3 months. It's a traumatic thing, being in there. But anyway, so I'm like in a funk, I guess, like just trying to like readjust to being back on. It's such a traumatic shift from like being told every second of every day like what you can and can't do, to like, oh, now you're back to like, you don't have to ask permission to do anything. You can just do whatever you want, eat whatever you want. It's a little adjustment period, but clearly, I'm back. But here's the long road that I really took to get here. Was I was kind of in a funk, coming out of there. I kept writing the whole time, and like when I got out, I kept writing, and like just trying to put things back together. And as I got deeper into the writing, I started trying to like pinpoint like, what do I want to focus on as a writer? Like what I have been reading, at a high level. I know that sounds weird. Just sounds weird to say it, but I wouldn't say like gifted and talented and all that kind of stuff, but I was a really advanced reader from a very young age. And so like when I was thinking about what kind of writer would I want to be, I started thinking about, all the authors that had this like huge influence on me. Like John Grisham, like Tom Clancy, trying to think, gosh, the guy that wrote Ernest Cline's another big one for me, Robin Cook, lots of, all these authors that I grew up with, and like, oh, George R. R. Martin, Game of Thrones. How could I leave that out? The chick who wrote the woman who wrote the Hunger Games, the Divergent series, or at least the first couple Divergent books. So I've been a big reader, and when I narrowed it down, like what really kept pulling me back into stories, and like what stories was I really into, it was the ones that were like very character driven. And so when I started trying to like really focus on like building characters first, in my stories, I had this novel I've been working on for like a year, And so that one was like pretty fully formed in my head already, and I had been, I was like literally halfway done with that one. But I had been writing down other ideas, and so I started trying to apply like what I was learning. I just really started getting deep into like character. Okay, like, well, what does that mean? Like, how do you write a character? Like, how does George R. R. Martin write a character? How does whoever write a character? Another one with a big one was I really loved the series The Expanse that was on Amazon, and that was a book series as well by I'm gonna draw a blank on his name, but is it S.A. Corey? I think it's James Corey. So that was another one I looked at, and so American Gods. I mean, I could go on and on, but basically, like, that's what I found. So when I started looking at, okay, how do you write a character? Well, it's a you treat them like a person. You treat them like, for example, one of the things that George R. R. Martin does, and I think a lot of like really great writers do, is they leave morality out of their characters. And what I mean by that is, when I'm writing or telling someone about a story that I'm writing, I don't like to use the word protagonist or antagonist, because it implies like a prejudice, right? Because if I say, well, he's the protagonist of my story, you're automatically thinking he's the good guy. But like, I think that when you do that, you box yourself in, and like then you have like stories that are like super, or feel to me to be like cookie cutter and like very basic. So when I started researching the character, like, it brought me back to that Myers-Briggs study, because that's essentially like, I mean, it's if you're treating a character like a person, then why not use something like Myers-Briggs as like a framework? I come from an IT background, so to me, and I I am so I thought I was an INFP because of the test. But one of the things I was going to say is, you should test yourself multiple times, because especially when you're new at it, you can mistype yourself. And so while I was correct on some things, I think because of like my state of mind at the time, like everything that was going on, and like just being kind of depressed, really, like I mistyped as an introvert and a feeler because I was definitely in my feels. But in reality, when I retook the test, I was feeling much, much better. Like, and after like going through a year's worth of therapy in jail, literally like every day I was I'm a veteran. So I got to go into this vets program. Another reason why, like, even though I was out of the loop for a year, like it could have been a lot worse. But, so when I retested, I tested ENTP, which is, a lot of similarities between the two. Is the main one being that we're both intuitive thinkers. But now I understand a lot more about myself, because I know now that I'm an extrovert intuitive, and like what comes along with that. And I know like what my blind spot is, which explains like my behavior sometimes, and like, why I've always felt isolated in my family, because I was really the only intuitive thinker, and nobody really understood me, and I didn't understand them. But so that's what I say. So really, I stumbled into like what I think is this like amazing tool where like, I had been to therapy before, and I had been to like, I'd had all these experiences, but it's like now having like this lens to like look at them through really opened up a lot of things for me. And what I mean by that, and I'm not, like I say, I'm not going to get super into detail. I'm already at 25 minutes, and I haven't talked about a movie yet. And I also haven't talked about boundaries. But I think it was important, it's kind of like the prologue, because like now you kind of know like where I'm coming from, and like that I've kind of been through a little bit. And so I'm not just really talking out of my ass, And so, like I say, I went from now knowing that I was an ENTP and trying to apply that to how I attack my daily life, and how I make plans and like how I choose activities and choose who I spend my time with. And it's made a huge difference. And I know that like the way that I came on in the beginning, it probably sounded like it made a big difference in the wrong way. But the reason I say that it made a huge difference is because like understanding that I was an ENTP now and like doing all the research that I've been doing like with these movie scenes and like cutting them down and like really looking at character and like seeing people who are different personality types, seeing how they react, seeing like their emotional responses, even though it's fiction, right? Even though it's actors portraying it, somebody wrote it. And if the writer was really good, then it came from a place of truth, even though it's fictionalized. And I find it super useful, and for example, one of the scenes I'm going to talk about in a little bit is from Lost in Translation. It's the I think 2003 movie by Sofia Coppola with Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson. And one of the reasons I love this movie is because it's very dialogue heavy. It's very dependent on the performances and no special effects. And it's all character. You have Scarlett Johansson playing a very distinct, what I believe to be an intuitive type of character, and then Bill Murray playing a sensing dominant character. And just watching like how they experience the world in Tokyo and each other is like, I think it's a great little like almost like a little petri dish or like ant farm, or like The Sims, I think it's a great tool. And so that's kind of the direction I decided to take this and take the channel. And I think that, in looking at these things, when people, and I found some channels out there that are very much more into this. They have programs that people can get into, and like you can learn how to type yourself. And if I get more information on them, and I think, like they're good or, whatever, in my opinion, like it's somebody I would feel comfortable like recommending, then I'll put them on, or whatever. Like I'll mention them on this podcast. I don't care about credit or anything like that. I just want people to have better lives. I want people to be able to, it sounds so dumb, but like kind of like, tap into their best self, because I feel like that's what I'm doing. And I think that anybody can do it. It's just a matter of understanding like how your hardware works, basically. And so, real quickly, because I do actually want to talk about movies, and I guess it's okay. Like if this one's only 30 minutes, like, and I go blow through movies real quick, I think this is more important than talking about movies, honestly, because here's what I was getting at. If you're still here, boundaries. So in getting back, like like kind of getting my life back together, one of the things that I had to do was like get access to my phone again, because it had, it was in California, so all my contacts were there. So there were a lot of people I couldn't reach for a long time, which a lot of them I was fine with, to be honest, because I already knew that they weren't like great for me. But and that's not saying anything against them. And let me be clear about that like if you have to set a boundary with someone, it's not anything personal. It can feel personal, and a matter of fact, it's gonna feel personal. It's gonna feel personal for you and for them. But it's not necessarily a knock on them as a person or a knock on you as a person. And I think that's what was so hard for me to understand before, that two people can be bad for each other and both be good people. Like that's so hard for me to wrap my mind around, or was like, now I get it. But before, that statement would make no sense to me. Like, well, if he's a good person and she's a good person, like, well, they must be good together and they must be nice to each other. Like, no. Like, you would think so, but that's not necessarily how it works. And sometimes, like, two really good people can be, like, really bad for each other and, like, be better away from each other. And sometimes, and this is when it really gets hard and really feels personal, that person might be a member of your family. And so, like, in my case, it was a family member. In another person's case, or in another case, it was a friend. You know, I had a person who I thought was a friend. And in some ways, like, and I think, you know, it's something that comes with setting boundaries is having a clear definition of what someone is to you, you know, and what that person is like in your life. And here's what I mean, you know. We throw the word, there are a lot of words we throw around without really clear defined meanings, or like maybe people have different meanings of what it is. Like friend is one of those words. Love is another one of those words. You know, I can tell someone, actually I could say it, like I could tell like somebody I'm like one of my boys or something, like, I love you, bro, you know. And like, and that means one thing. But if I say it to, you know, a woman, I love you, it's very different, you know. And I can call someone my friend, and, you know, but that has like, that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, you know. To me, friend could mean acquaintance. It could mean like, oh yeah, that's my friend. You know, people say it like that, but they don't really mean like to another person, if they call someone their friend, it could be like they're talking about someone like their family. You know, they might think of, you know, a good example. I finally got in touch with like my old Muay Thai coach a couple of days ago, and he was somebody who, like, you know, I was really nervous to call him, you know, because I hadn't talked to him in so long, and it ended up being like a great, you know, like 2-hour conversation, something like that. And I felt, and like found out that he felt the same way, and he feels this way with a lot of people. Like, but you know, a lot of the people that I trained with and did Muay Thai with, like, I really feel like they're family. Like I feel like, and I told him this, like I felt like he's closer to me than like any of my actual like blood family, you know. And I guess why I say that is I'm trying not to get lost, but so with boundaries, friends, right? That's where I was talking about. So definitions are important, and you can't have an effective boundary if you don't have a definition. And so the example I want to give is like, okay, so there's a concept I think that's very important, and I think that this will help you set a boundary. So basically a boundary is just, it's very simple. It's a decision, right? It's a decision on what is good for me as a person, what's good for you as a person. I guess a boundary could be a lot of things, but in this context, that's what we mean. So it means like standards of behavior. So if I'm married, so this one actually came up with an acquaintance of mine. So him and his wife were separated right now, and I went through a very similar situation where his wife, current wife, like who he separated from, had a male friend. A friend. And there's that word again. So to her, a friend might mean one thing. To him, a friend, in this case, 100% means something else. And so they have a boundary problem because she has a friend that upsets this guy, right? And so they have a decision to make. And this happens very often, you know, especially in relationships where either the female has male friends or the guy has female friends. Those two people have to decide boundaries, right? Is the husband okay with their, or whatever, the I mean, and I'm using heterosexual examples here. This goes for homosexual couples, pansexual couples, polyamorous couples. Like every type of person, couple, unit has to set boundaries. Like what is okay for them, what is okay for the group. And like when someone violates those, like then you have a decision to make, right? But if you never set them in the first place, then you can't get mad when someone keeps doing things to you that you don't like. And I think that's what this guy was going through was he did not want his wife to be alone with another guy when he is not around. Perfectly natural. Like I get it. And you can say he's jealous or not, but I think this goes for me as well. I don't know how this turned into the relationship show. I might talk about a movie at some point. But for me, out of respect for the female that I'm with, I would not put myself in that situation, like where I'm alone with another woman by myself. Like, because even if it's completely platonic, like there's just too much room like left to the imagination. Like why? Like what for? Like what does it accomplish? And like some people think that's crazy, and some people think like, oh, you should be able to do whatever. And like, I know there's swingers. Like I see them on TikTok. Like I get it. And I dated someone like, after my divorce, I dated somebody who was a swinger before. So I know all about the lifestyle. Like I've never been in it, but because it's not for me. But like I don't judge anybody for that. And if that's, again, that just comes down to like their boundaries. Like they have an understanding with their partners and they're happy. And like that's all that matters. And so what I wanted to like translate that to is this concept of energy, right? And this is something that I'm writing about now, and I think it comes into play with boundaries. It's very important. Like it's almost like, for me, it goes hand in hand with boundaries. So if you think about like yourself as a machine, which we essentially are. We have moving parts and static parts, and we have hardware and software and all that stuff. So, and they say the brain is like the most complicated machine or whatever. So it's not a stretch. So if you think of yourself as a machine, and you think of yourself as, or like every machine has a battery, right? Your cell phone, your car, like whatever. So let's say you're a Tesla. I love the Tesla example because I did have one. I will have another. And this one will have ludicrous speed. My last one didn't. So yeah, that's just what I need, right? Kill myself with ludicrous speed. So, okay, if you're a Tesla, and let's say you charge up overnight and you start out at 100, like in the morning. Well, like everything you do is going to wear down your battery, right? So like any activity, well, that's not true. Some, in this context, can charge you up, okay? So let's just say everything you do, every person you interact with is either red, yellow, or green. So they either give you energy, like they're either static, like there's no change, or they take away energy. And I mean people or tasks, right? So for example, if you have a job that you hate, then every time when you get up and you got to go in and you hate it, like I worked with this girl who I used to like literally check my clock when she would walk in, because I would be like, how long is it going to be until she says I want to kill myself? And she would literally say that. She was joking, of course, but she also did not want to be there. And that was most of the people that I worked with there at that place. And I was like, well, why do you still work here? Like, I didn't like it either, but I knew I wasn't staying. So like, I knew it was just temporary for me, but I was like, well, why are you still here? Like, go do something else. But anyway, so that obviously just getting ready for work takes her energy. Being in there takes her energy, and okay. So then like, let's say something that's just I don't know, laundry might be like, maybe you don't care either way. And if you have to do laundry, it's just a break even, right? But then let's say something that you love doing, like you enjoy walking your dog. Or for me, like I enjoy it, like a ton of things. So for me, it could be going for a run. For me, it could be like going and take pictures of stuff. Like I like going to museums, or like I like going to coffee shops. So like I could go, I can write a laundry list of the stuff that like gives me energy. And so those things are different for everybody. You know, what takes away energy for me might give you energy. So like, you know, all of our Teslas are not created equal. And I believe very strongly that a person's cognitive stack, like how their brain processes information and takes in all this stuff, definitely affects like what is red or green for them. And so, you know, I think that, you know, when we start putting all this stuff together, like it becomes like pretty powerful. And like I speak from personal experience. I speak from, you know, like I've recently kind of getting my son into this. He's 18. He's in college. He's also an intuitive, and so like now that I understand, like now that I've had him test himself, and like and I've typed him, like now like our relationship is like moving in a different direction. Like I mean, it's always been really good. Like we've always been really close, but now it's like I know like even better how to talk to him, if that makes sense, you know. And I know that because he is I'm an extroverted intuitive, but he's an introverted intuitive. So once you start to understand the differences between the two, like then you start to know like, okay, well I should tell Nate this, but in this way, or shouldn't say his name, but so you get where I'm going. So here's the main takeaways, and I've already talked for like 40 minutes, and I'm sure it'll come down some when I edit it. So I will run through the movies real quick, but here's the bottom line. I think whether you believe in Myers-Briggs and Jung and the cognitive functions and all that stuff, boundaries are critical, and you have to figure out like what your limits are for everything. You know, like you have to figure that out, like for the people in your life, because if you want to be better for yourself and better for the people that you love, like it all starts with your energy level. You know, like if you're ground down, if you're feeling worn out all the time because you're just constantly dealing with stuff like that you shouldn't have to deal with just because you're not setting the right boundaries, that's a life-changing thing, you know. And like that's something that like I had to realize, and what I realized was that when I started cutting those things out that were reds and yellows, like my life got exponentially better. My productivity went through the roof. I felt better. Like I had more confidence. Like I was like doing better on dating apps. You know what I'm saying? Like everything started to feel like, you know, like here's a dumb, it's going to sound really dumb because it's like there's these certain words that get really bad. Like they just have so much baggage, and the word I'm going to use here is manifestation. And like I get why people say it, because it almost that's kind of what it feels like, you know. But I don't believe that you can sit there and think about something and the universe will like put it in front of you. But what I do believe is that when, like I said earlier, you know, I come from an IT background, and if I look at the brain as a computer, you know, and my nerds out there will know what I'm talking about here. Like if you think about almost anything in IT, and I'm going to get super nerdy here, but like think about the what is it, the IP stack, right? There's all these layers in each segment of a signal, you know, that goes from computer, you know, and there's all these different layers in it, and they all mean something. And if you believe that the brain is like that, then you can understand it and you can understand yours. And then that's the key, right? Is like once you understand how something works, well, then you make it work for you, you know, and you can get the most out of it and you can maximize its efficiency and its effectiveness, and like, and you can just crush everything in life, you know. And that doesn't mean crushing people. Like, it doesn't have to be like an I win and they lose, or a zero sum game, or, you know, like it can be like, I'm doing better, so now I have the energy to help other people do better. You know, I'm like excelling at things, so now I have the time to devote some energy to like extra energy to my son or to my daughter or to like this, you know, my spouse or whoever, you know. And so like that's what I hope, and so that's, you know, my main passion is writing fiction, and that's like my first book will be, it's going to be self-published, but it'll be, I'm putting it out on October 13th. And but the self-help one is still under like that one, like I literally just started like working on this stuff. Like, I mean, it's stuff that I've like been studying for a while, but like just really trying to put it into book form now. But I will be talking about it a lot more because I think it's relevant, at least like for a few minutes, just to catch like, so this is not a normal like format, and you know, now that I've kind of explained that stuff and like how I feel about Myers-Briggs, and like now we can talk about like some fun stuff for a minute. And so if you've stuck around this long, like I really appreciate it. You know, I think that stuff was like very important for me to talk about. And so now there's not really a good segue, so like I'm just gonna do it. I promised last time that I would look into TIFF, because TIFF was going on and other film festivals, and I did, and I was honestly like kind of sad about it, because what I found was that although like they make it seem like film festivals are all about like being inclusive and like art that normally wouldn't get a chance to be seen, like getting represented, like it is, but it's not, because you can't really watch them. You know, I tried because I was going to review some, you know, for the channel, but you can't even like, it's like strange to me that in 2023, you can't log on to TIFF's website like you can a Netflix or something and watch movies that are at TIFF. Like you can't. So I guess maybe it's an infrastructure thing, but it seems like in this time when most stuff is shot on digital anyway, like it shouldn't be a problem for people to watch stuff like directly from TIFF, you know, especially if you're like, I'd pay $50 or something to like have a special weekend pass to like stream whatever you wanted at a film festival. I think that'd be badass. I don't know why they don't do it. So that was my takeaway, is like, why do I care about TIFF? Because like I can't watch any movies there. So, you know, until that changes, like I'm not going to worry about film festivals, you know. Like, I mean, it sucks because I think some really great films, I mean, especially some of my all-time favorites have like won film festivals, and I guess maybe that's their benefit, is like you just hear about the movies when they win, but I'd love to watch more of them. So and then the other thing was the state of the MCU, and like the kind of the nerd what is it, fandom, basically, like the big three: Star Wars, MCU, and DC. And there's not really much has changed. We're coming up on a good time for what I hope will be a good time for Marvel, with Loki, which I'll be watching, and the Marvels, which I'm really looking forward to. You know, I think Captain Marvel gets a bad rap. I've rewatched it multiple times. Like, Brie Larson's a really good actress. I think she won an Oscar. I meant to go back and watch her some of her independent stuff, but she's another one that gets a bad rap, you know, because she said some things, like she actually had an opinion on something, and she kind of got almost canceled for it. And even though Captain Marvel made a lot of money, the movie did, like, for some reason the character just isn't getting like the respect in the MCU, which she's still newer, so she's got time. It took Thor a couple movies before people really liked him, you know. So But the Marvels looks good, so I'm excited about that. And then I did hear that. Gosh, I'm gonna forget his name now. The guy who plays Kang, Jonathan Majors. I think his case, something positive happened with his assault case, if I remember correctly. So, which is good because I didn't want them to have to like kick him out of the MCU. I think Kang is like one of the most exciting characters that we've had in a while. Even though they kind of took a dump with him in Ant-Man, didn't really like that ending. But anyway, like, and that's the thing. Like, I shouldn't say that. Like, I'm not a critic. Like that ending just didn't work for me. And that's one thing I want to be clear about going forward. Like, I thought, like, when I started this, that was kind of what I wanted to do, was like write movie reviews and like be a critic. But I don't want to do that at all. Like, I think the more like that I've like studied writing and like I guess the art of filmmaking and all that stuff, like it honestly gets on my nerves when I listen to critics now. Especially, like, I guess when I say critics, I mean, like, people who don't do anything creative and, like, sit there and criticize artists, Like, if it's fine to, like, have an opinion and all that, but, like, just do it respectfully and, like, I don't know. I get kind of sensitive now. It's really weird. So I'm going to try not to do that. And just talk about, like, how that matters is, for example, I was so excited to talk about Foundation, the show on Apple. And then I watched episode 1 and I liked it. I was back in the groove. And then I started episode 2 and I saw something that you see sometimes in TV where, like, sometimes the second season just takes a turn, like, and sometimes you're like really happy about it and other times it just doesn't work for you. And like that's what happened to me in episode 2 of Foundation. Like, it just took a turn that, like, I was like, well, this doesn't feel like the same show. And since I'm not a critic and it's not my job to like cover the show, like, I just turned it off and moved on to something else that was on my list, because I think I did mention in the other thing, I had my watch list is like, it was like super long, so I don't have time to, like, I might come back to it, if I, because I do love Lee Pace. There's a lot of things about the show I liked. There was just one scene in particular I was like, nah, if they're going to keep doing this, like, I'm out. So, and so that's kind of how I'm going to do things, like if I start watching something and it's really good and I'm going to stick with it, like there's The Crowded Room, I'm still going to get back to because I really liked that one. I watched an episode of a show called The Changeling with Keith Stanfield, which, like, I could tell within 5 minutes of that one that I think that show is going to be excellent. It looks like, you can just kind of tell, it looks like it has a really good pedigree. Like, I don't remember who wrote it, but Lakeith Stanfield, if you don't know who he is, you should check out his IMDb, because you'll be surprised, like, at all the movies he's popped up in, like Nope. He did a comedy, well, I don't know, like, what to call it. I should have pulled up his IMDb, but he's up and coming for sure. Oh, he was in Knives Out. He's one of the cops with that. The Changeling looks very good, so I'm gonna definitely go back to that. And I feel like there was another show. It'll probably come to me, but that's basically how I'm gonna attack, like, new stuff and new shows. When House of the Dragon comes back, I'll watch that. So if something's good, I'm in. If not, like, I'm gonna move on to something else and keep throwing in, like, other movies and older shows that I'm watching, because I do take inspiration from a lot of this stuff when I'm working on my own stuff. So really, like, I was gonna talk about Lost in Translation and The Social Network a little bit, but I think I'm gonna save that for next week, or might just skip them and move on to another thing, or to other scenes that I've posted, because we'll see. So I might come back to those, but I've already gone like an hour, and once I edit this down, it'll still probably be like 40 minutes. So I don't want to, like, overstay my welcome for the people that actually listen to this. But another thing I did want to do was I kind of want to celebrate my ENTPs in film. So you'll probably be seeing lots of like Tony Stark clips and some Indiana Jones. And then also, I've been struggling to find female ENTP characters. I don't know what it is. So if anybody that listens to this is into Myers-Briggs and kind of does this, like, I'm sure some people do it. There's a whole website that's devoted to this, so I know people out there do it. Personality database. But so yeah, if you know of any cool ENTP characters in film that I could put clips up from, then I think that would be cool. Yeah, and then that's it. So again, like I apologize for this podcast being light on movies. But at least now, like, you kind of have an idea of like what we'll be talking about. So I will be talking about some new stuff. I'll talk about new and old stuff, but I'm not gonna stay tied to like a show that I'm not into just because. And that's about it, I think. So, thanks for listening. So yeah, and I will do I'll try and do less of the personal stuff. Like, I'll try and limit it next time to 5 and 10 minutes. But I think this time it was really important to just kind of let everybody know, like, a little bit more about me and like what they can expect from this. And so yeah, it's gonna be like a little bit of self-help, a little, but mostly movies, and like hopefully we'll laugh more, and eventually maybe I'll get some people to interview, because I know there are some people that have that do have channels that are devoted to Myers-Briggs and stuff. So if they're into movies too, I think that would be fun. So if anybody like that's listening to this and you'd be interested in like, being interviewed or like discussing some movies or characters or anything, I think that'd be fun. So I'm probably going to leave it there, and we'll hopefully get more into the power of cinema and how it can change our lives next time, because I did the scenes. So I would just say, go take a look at the scenes that I put up if you're interested, like the Bill Murray scenes from Lost in Translation, the Scarlett Johansson one, and then the scenes from The Social Network are really cool, because you have like Sean Parker, who's an ENTP like I am, and then Mark Zuckerberg, who I think is an INFJ, if I remember right, or at least that's how I typed him. And they're always up for debate, and I do love a good debate, as people who are familiar with ENTPs will know. So until next time, I think it's just going to be once a week. It was such a struggle just to get back to doing this one, because my life's been so crazy, like dealing with outside stuff. So I don't want to commit to more than one a week at this point. And so I'll shoot for next Tuesday. And, if you enjoyed this, bless you, and like and subscribe. Don't be a stranger. I'll see you next time.